What's up, bitches? Before you go getting offended, today I want to talk about Charlie Bradbury, who's played by the incomparable Felicia Day in the beloved TV series Supernatural. And for those of you who don't know, that's her catchphrase.
Your Highness!
What's up, bitches?
So who's Charlie? Well, she is my gay queen, and I bowed to her. But she's also one of the many badass women in the Supernatural verse. And like many of them, they wasted the potential of and eventually killed off. Supernatural kills off a lot of characters, a lot of very loved characters, including the very two main characters of Sam and Dean Winchester themselves. But none of the deaths in the show have been as senseless or tragic as Charlie. And needless to say, fans were outraged. So let's take a closer look at the character of Celeste Middleton, aka Her Highness, Charlie Bradbury, the Queen of Moons herself. And when we first meet her, let me just say that we are treated to one of the greatest character introductions ever. Charlie unknowingly works for the big bad of the season, Dick Roman, the head Leviathan himself. Charlie is a brilliant hacker on the run from the government and living under an alias. And this is how she finds herself working for Dick Roman's company. But you might ask, what is she on the run for? Well, what she did is she stole a copy of a video game by hacking into the company's computers, and she reprogrammed it to serve her own purposes and then released it before the game was actually released to the public. And when she did this, she was only 16 years old. So what do I love in particular about Charlie? Well, for once, she makes us geek girls look good. She's not this cliche character that's completely disheveled and unkept and completely socially awkward and nobody ever wants to date. Charlie is this drop-dead gorgeous, smooth son of a bitch that puts Dean Winchester's charm to shame. And you gotta love her. For geeky girls everywhere, she is a giant win in popular culture and media. And even better than that, she's queer. She's here, and she is definitely not going to let you forget about that. For such a long time running show, Supernatural does not have a lot of LGBT characters. I mean, they're going into their final 15th season, and I can count the number of gay or queer characters on one hand. But there is one thing I've always appreciated about the show, and that is that they've never made somebody's sexuality a big deal. That is, of course, unless you are Dean, and, you know, Dean is straight. For once on screen, we're not seeing a female-female relationship that is overtly sexualized. And that's a giant win as well. Of course, it's all done with the slightly comedic flair that Supernatural is famous for and isn't mocking or gross. Charlie Bradbury is the representation that we all deserve, but we still have that wait for it moment. And for once, with such a loved character, we were hoping that it wouldn't come. Appearing in several episodes spread over several different seasons, fans got to absolutely fall in love with Charlie, and the writers are absolutely amazing at making us do this. And we learned a little bit about her backstory and a little bit more about her, and we got to see her build new relationships, come into her own, and find romance. One of the best relationships that we saw developed on screen with her was with Dean Winchester, wherein she basically became his loved little sister. And then they killed her. Her death was so senseless and meaningless. She was just discarded in a bathtub like trash. As you can imagine, the fandom was absolutely outraged. And to this day, it is still the biggest mistake that the Supernatural writers have ever made, and one they have recently tried to rectify by introducing Charlie in the Apocalypse world. Now, while we do get a version of Charlie back, You have to understand that this Charlie is not our Charlie. They are two separate people. This isn't something you can just fix, CW. It isn't. What you're doing is just following the common practice in the media of killing off the minorities. And meanwhile, Garth, the straight white male, is off frolicking as a werewolf with the love of his life. But let's face it, Supernatural is not very good at keeping women around, especially strong women. The few exceptions being Sheriff Jody Mills and Rowena. But this is more likely to do with the fact that they have learned from the Charlie fiasco. Deaths themselves are not uncommon on the show. As I've said, even the main characters have died several times. But the thing is they always come back. And a good death drives the story. It drives the plot. But somehow women seem to be constantly coming up with the short end of the stick. And there is just a huge list of women that have been killed to further the male character's story. So really, Supernatural, I mean, I get that deaths are part of the show, but can we keep a female around just for a little bit? When you get down to it, the show has never actually had a female lead, nor have they even had a reoccurring female part. The only character who is female that you can count as a main character or even reoccurring is Baby, Dean Winchester's car, and she's a machine, okay? She is a vehicle, and she does not represent the other 50% of the population, you know? And that kind of says something about the show itself. The only constant female representation in it can't even speak. Sometimes the only female representation in an episode is the villain, which means that they are an antagonistic character. This does not paint women in a good light, and they're often represented as manipulative demons. But when it comes down to it, Charlie's death is one of the most senseless in the entire series. And we're talking 15 seasons worth. I mean, other than upsetting the two main male characters, what did her death serve? What purpose? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. She is just another pawn to sacrifice herself for the brothers. The boys, they can't keep a woman around to save their lives, and I mean that literally. Charlie represented so much to us, and not just on a grand scale, but she was our in. She was that person who got accepted and welcomed into the Winchester family, the little sister, and we all saw ourselves as her. She was somebody who mattered. Yeah, okay. Charlie was an adult woman. She knew what she was getting into. Yeah, okay, whatever. But her death should have meant something. At least caused a division between the brothers. I mean, Sam actually holds partial responsibility for her death, and Dean would have gone to any lengths to hunt down the person who was responsible. And yet, he never actually finds out Sam's part in the entire thing. And so this is part of the story that we never see payoff of. There's no satisfaction. There's nothing. Charlie just became another stereotypical TV death as a woman and as a member of the LGBT community. And all for shock value. Charlie could have gone on to play a much larger role in the series, like Jody or Rowena. She could have been a role model to women and make an impact, because she is a character that had depth. Charlie Bradbury deserved better.
Oh no.